Welcome into I Said What I Said. I'm Brad 𝐬𝐻𝐾𝐿. That's Tyson 𝐼𝐻𝐭. This is our college football playoff rankings episode. We're going to do a one-off because we are getting down to the nitty-gritty, folks. This is the time that we got one game left in the regular season. Then we got conference championship games. And then we're going to know who's competing for a national championship in this new 12-team playoff format. And Tyson, last weekend was absolute carnage. 7 top 25 AP teams went down. Seven top 25 college football playoff ranked teams went down. Now, some of those were in a ranked unranked matchup, but the unbeatens were eaten. The unbeatens were ready to play. They shook some things up. We're going to break down these new rankings, everything that went on. What did you think, man? I mean, we were kind of like, maybe this weekend will be good, and wow, did it deliver.
Oh, it was crazy. It was fantastic from a viewing standpoint. It wasn't great from a betting standpoint, but that's kind of become part of our brand here, as I said what I said. This is one of those times where you don't envy the playoff ranking committee here. And we're going to get into some of these things. I'm a little bit pissed off at the way that some of these teams only fell a little ways. Well, some of them fell all the way outside here at the top 25. But overall, again, not something you can be mad about as of yet. But it does feel like maybe, the teams we were asking for to get a little bit of respect, SMU, finally got it.
Yes, indeed. Let's go through it. The last unbeaten Power 4 team, the Oregon Ducks are still the number 1 ranked team. Ohio State comes in at number 2. Texas, number 3. Penn State survives at Minnesota. They're number 4. Notre Dame lays the boots to Army. They are number 5. Miami's still creeping in there at 6 at 10-1. Then you start going to your two loss teams here, your first 2 loss teams. Georgia at 7, Tennessee at 8. Get back to some one-loss teams here. SMU 9, Indiana coming off the loss against Ohio State, dropped to 10. Boise State survives Wyoming. They're flirting with disaster a little bit. They're still at 11. Clemson now up to 12, 9-2. Alabama, they're 13 with 3 losses. Ole Miss, they're 14 with 3 losses. South Carolina, they're 15 with 3 losses. You have Arizona State sitting at 9-2 at 16. Tulane continues their climb. They are now 17th at 9-2. The second group of 5 team that's in here, Iowa State 18, BYU 19 after back-to-back losses. Texas A&M, a bad loss. They are down at 20. They are out. Missouri, they're 21 with 3 losses. UNLV up to 22. That makes for a very interesting game for Boise State in the Mountain West Conference Final or Mountain West Championship game. Illinois 23 at 8-3. Kansas State 24, 8-3. Colorado loses. They are down to 25 at 8-3. Tyson, a lot of shakeups, a lot of matchups. We'll go through the bracket here in a little bit, but what was anything that stood out for you as you're kind of scrolling through?
Well, it is a little bit interesting and intriguing to me that Bama only slides here to 13 and Ole Miss stays at 14, both ahead of South Carolina, which I view at this point in the season as a mistake. But, Brad, I was kind of running through my head earlier, and look, I'm going to do my best to do a blind resume ranking. I didn't workshop this, so if this sucks, go ahead and yell at me. But Power 4 team with 3 losses, a top 10 win, right? Their losses are to the number 8 team in the country and 2 unranked teams. The average margin of defeat in those unranked games is about 18 points. And then a Power 4 team with 3 losses, no top 10 wins, but have been within 2 scores of a top 5 team, and then have handled business in their conference. And I butchered that, but all I'm trying to say is that Illinois isn't that far away from Alabama when we're doing this thing. And look, I'm not saying Illinois needs to make the playoffs, but if we're going to talk about it, let's talk about it because, in my opinion, Arizona State has a better resume right now. South Carolina has been cooking with gas. UNLV, like Missouri, still here at 21. This feels like maybe a different episode that we're going to do a little bit later here. But if this is the time of year when we're going to start seeing these blind resumes come up, and I don't think the committee is able to defend themselves with some of these.
It is interesting, and we are going to do something on the SEC coming out later. Just, it's Thanksgiving week. We're trying to do some different stuff as people are kind of figuring some things out and having debates with their families about football and all that good stuff. We'll kind of get you involved in that. But, that's interesting, Tyson, when you go through that blind resume. And it's interesting because, the Big Ten clearly is valued by the committee, right? Like Indiana loses to Ohio State. Yes, they don't have the superior win. They don't have a star on strength of schedule. But like, well, you've destroyed your schedule to this point, or the opponents to your point, to this point, and you only lost to Ohio State, who's now the second-ranked team in the country. Penn State is 4. Illinois is up there. So, I mean, it seems like, and obviously Oregon's number 1. So you got 5 Big Ten teams there. And then you look at the SEC, and it is littered with schools on the back end. And I do question that a little bit, right? It's like these guys are beating up on each other, and we think that these guys are so good. Well, why aren't they winning these games? They should. That's one of my questions. So that's interesting. I think Arizona State is a little low for my liking. They are playing some of the best ball in the country right now. They did it without their star running back. They did it without their star quarterback for a different time. So that's pretty complete. And last thing I'll say, we'll kind of move. I'm glad SMU climbed to the top 10. I mean, yes, that BYU loss looks worse now, but the fact that they're right, and the fact that they're still winning these football games, they've put together this streak. You got to be rewarded. You got to win who's ever's on your schedule, and that's what SMU's been able to do.
Yeah, Notre Dame at 5 feels a bit like a joke to me. Look, they're beating who they're supposed to beat, and they're handling their business. But I'm a little bit more hesitant to wipe some of the bad performances under the rug. That's all going to be null and void here after this weekend, really, for Notre Dame. But, Brad, this is something we do every week. Can I get a Tulane check-in here? Does it feel like maybe they don't have a shot sitting here at 17?
They're out if Boise State wins out. Like they're not going to get in. I thought maybe there was going to be some carnage enough at the Power 4 level to justify putting 2 Group of 5 teams in. But Tyson, I got to say, I got to repent. Tulane's the best Group of 5 team in the country right now.
Yeah.
Boise State does not look like the same team who went and battled Oregon. Genty's still putting up numbers, but this offense is taking a step back. I don't know if they're just throttling it down, kind of like what Michigan did last year, because they know they can just win by handing the ball off. But Genty, the worry was that he was going to be workhorsed into the ground, and it's kind of starting to look that way a little bit. I still think they're just so much more talented than the other Mountain West teams that they can afford that. I'll tell you, if you're Boise State, you do not want to see UNLV in the Mountain West Conference game, because you lose that, you're done. And there's a chance they might. For Tulane, that's their chance, man. They're going to play Memphis on Thanksgiving night. That's a big game. They have to win that, obviously. Then you play Army in the AAC championship game. So it's not a shoo-in for anybody here. I mean, those are 2 hard games for Tulane and Boise State. They'll get one against Oregon State. They're just 1 year removed from being a Pac-12 team. So we have no clue who's going to be the G5 representative. I'll put it that way. It looks like Boise State is, but man, we got some more football to be played.
Yeah, and we don't know who the best team in the country is, which is a great place to be with a couple weeks left. That's why it's fun. That's why we're glad that the playoff has expanded, but this feels super gettable to me. And we knew this was going to happen, but now that it's 12, I want it to be 24.
So let's go through the projected bracket now based on these ratings and rankings. Number 1, Oregon. They would get a bye. The number 2 seed would be Texas, because in this scenario, Ohio State would be not winning the Big Ten, so they would be the 5th seed. Miami, again, projected to win the ACC. They would get the 3rd seed and a first-round bye. And then Boise State would be the highest-ranked other conference champion. They would be the 4th seed, getting a first-round bye, playing the winner of Ohio State and then Arizona State, who is projected to win the Big 12. The 6th seed is Penn State. They'd be facing the 11th seed Indiana Hoosiers in the Big Ten matchup. The 7th seed is Notre Dame facing SMU in what is a really intriguing matchup. Then 8 and 9 are Georgia, Tennessee, and another SEC matchup. I'd be surprised if that's how the committee does it at the end. I mean, right now, I don't think it matters, but I don't think that they're going to want to put a Big Ten team versus a Big Ten team, SEC team versus an SEC team. My estimation, although Penn State hasn't played Indiana this season, so maybe that is something, but it is notable. I mean, based on these rankings, that would be the matchups. I don't know if the committee would try to fluff some things around a little bit, so they can play with their first round matchups.
And if we're going by the bracket here, I'm going to run something by you, and you can tell me I'm wrong if you want. I think Oregon is in, even if they lose a game. I think Miami is in, even if they lose a game.
Really?
Texas is in. Yeah, I do. At this point, I think that there's been enough goodwill that they're at 3 that it's going to have to be a far drive, unless like SMU bodies them or Clemson crushes them in a matchup there. I think Texas is in with a loss. I think Ohio State is in, even if they lose again. And then I think Tennessee's safe, because Tennessee's not going to represent in the SEC championship game. It seems like their season They could lose on Saturday, and this whole thing's null and void. But to me, it feels like this is a 12-team playoff, and Penn State is in. That is the other one that I would say is for sure in. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams in a 12-team playoff that I believe are safe at this current moment.
Notre Dame plays USC this weekend. I think if Notre Dame loses, they're out.
They're out.
What do you think about that? You think they're out? That's 2 losses, to an unranked USC team and to a G5 team. So that's something that'll be interesting to keep on. 2 ACC teams in here is interesting to me. Because we were talking about that, we were thinking it would be maybe one from the ACC, one from the Big 12. Get a few more. You got 4 Big 10 teams in here. Tyson, only 3 SEC teams in here. Are you thinking that's how it's going to work out at the end?
Absolutely not. I think that they're going to follow the money, and there's going to be 7 SEC teams in here by the end of this thing. No, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was 3, based on the way the SEC's kind of fallen this season. Like Bama and Ole Miss just refused to maintain any positive momentum when it comes to the seeding here. And then South Carolina feels like they're just the placeholder at 15 for you're not getting in from this point backwards at this point in the season. So I could see 3. I think realistically we still end up with 4 because I don't believe the committee is going to put 2 ACC teams in, but I also don't believe Miami's losing again. So if they do lose, then that becomes a different conversation.
Right, and so that's interesting. The
Miami's good. It's good in the fact that they're in right now.
Well, that's what I want to circle back to, because that's the one that I kind of had a little let's talk on that type of deal, because when I heard that, you think if they lose to SMU in the the ACC championship game, they're still going to get in?
To me, that loss is a heck of a lot better than Vanderbilt or Oklahoma.
Okay. So that's fair. And we do know the committee has said they value making the conference championship game even if you lose. So because I don't think they want to punish and take that away from teams being like, well, it's bad.
If 𝐾𝐿 throws for 500 yards on Saturday and beats Miami at home, then things get interesting.
I agree with that. So that's what I was going to say too. If they lose this Saturday, I think they're done unless they win the ACC. Now, I think they would still have a path to get in. Let me look that up while I'm kind of talking through this. But it's interesting to me, Tyson, that we have SMU now getting in at large based on their record, and Clemson's 12th. Do you think the committee is now comfortable with how SMU's played, how Miami's played, and Clemson sitting at 9-2 looks like they're going to have a tough one against South Carolina to close? But do you think they're comfortable enough with that aspect that they're willing to put 2 teams in no matter what happens the rest of the way for the ACC?
Well, the interesting part is the messaging from the committee has been like the kind of value guys who have been around the block a little bit, and those things. There are 2 college football coaches right now left in the country that have won national championships: Kirby Smart and Dabo Swinney.
Yeah, and we'll get into. I do want to keep teasing this because I think this is going to be a fun episode that we're going to do talking about just the SEC. Miami controls their own path, right? So they haven't clinched. Nobody's clinched yet. So they're gonna, if they go on the road and beat Syracuse, then they're in. That's how they do it, because everything's not locked up yet. What Clemson needs is Miami to lose, and that's it. So Miami loses, Clemson's now in the ACC championship. That's their path. So that would shake some things up. SMU's already in. So they've already clinched their spot. So it's really Miami. So if Miami wins, it's SMU and Miami. Clemson probably is then eliminated from CFP. Is that what you're gathering on that too? Yeah, maybe I misspoke there. I'm already penciling in a win for them here as they go to Syracuse, which is not a good place to be with the Miami Hurricanes football team. I think Miami has the advantage in common opponents between Clemson and Miami. It's 4-0 versus 3-1 there. So it's going to be one of those deals like the Big Ten had to sit for 3 days and work out all the tiebreakers. We might not know until Friday before conference championship games kick. If Miami wins against Syracuse, they're going to be in against SMU. They win. So let's say this. Let's say Miami beats SMU in the conference championship game. SMU now has 2 losses. Their 2 losses are against BYU, Miami. Is there any way that the committee then puts Clemson in, jumps SMU despite them losing in the ACC championship game and having 2 losses?
They ain't played nobody, Paul. I mean, what do we? That's what it's going to come down. Oh, they lost to Georgia, and that's the end of the discussion. Never mind. They lost to Georgia. Bama beat Georgia. Therefore, Bama is greater than Clemson. Texas A&M's in the same conference as Alabama and Georgia. Therefore, they're higher. No, I'm on an SEC hater kick today. I got an LSU hat behind me. You can probably tell why. It's all going to be confusing and very intense, I think, as we end here. The other kind of sneaky one here is I think Indiana is in if they win, and I think that's the way it should be. But that's going to piss people off to no end.
That'll be the frustrating one. But you can't keep a Big Ten team out with one loss. Who lost to Ohio State? Who's going to be who's number 2 right now? That's just asinine. Like, you got to take care of your schedule, no matter who's on it. Like,
and context that's ridiculous. Matters. I mean, they got bodied, but if special teams showed up to play, they lose by 10 instead of 30.
How I'm reading this thing now, again, folks, we got one more game left to play in the regular season. We got conference championship games. Things can shuffle. Tyson, I think we're only going to get 3 SEC teams in. I don't know how you can make the argument for Alabama. You definitely can't make the argument for Ole Miss based on who they lost to. It's really going to come down to Alabama. Now, if we go through this, SMU with 2 losses, and if they lose in the conference championship game, even if Miami loses in the conference championship game, how can you say that they haven't put together a better season than Alabama, who lost to Vanderbilt, who lost to Oklahoma? And I get the money thing, but at a certain point, though, like, we're playing a sport for a national championship game, a national championship based on what you do on the field. Like, if you want to make it an invitational, go do that in the preseason, like it's one of these college basketball games. Just have a little round robin. I mean, this is ridiculous. You're competing, like, these are legacies. People get fired over this stuff. Like, you can't just say Alabama, oh, we like them, even though they have 3 losses. Like, let's just say this. Let's say Miami loses in the ACC championship game. They're kept out. Like, that's a massive indictment on Cristobal's resume when we look down 5 years if Miami continues to struggle. It's like, well, you didn't make the CFP. Well, they should have been in necessarily, like, right? Like, so that's why I think they have to take advantage. They have to take in mind, like, screw if they're on a neutral field, who wins? You should have beat Vandy. You should have beat Oklahoma. Then we're not having this conversation. So that's where I'm kind of at on this thing. Like, am I crazy? Is that kind of where you're at? Like, do you think it should be the best teams, or how are you kind of looking at this thing at this point in the year?
Well, I'm certainly hoping that putting Clemson above Alabama at this point, 12 versus 13, means that if Clemson takes care of their business, they're in, whether or not they make the ACC championship game. Because if you don't lose and you're ahead of somebody, it feels impossible to me that you could get jumped, especially with the way Bama looked. I mean, we're just coming off the 4-team era, so maybe putting a little bit too much stock in this. But this whole thing was built around, you can lose a game at the beginning of the season. You can't lose going in to playoff time, or else you're on the verge of getting kicked out here. No, I think this whole thing is setting up really well to just massive vitriol all over the internet. And if this thing holds, dude, the Texas hate about how Texas hasn't played anybody and none of that stuff, they will kick the shit out of SMU and Notre Dame. And then all of a sudden it's SEC or bust, and we're right back.
I don't know about Notre Dame. That defense is legit.
They'll kill him.
Quinn Ewers is hurt. I know your boy Arch is there. Is he going to be able to run around those athletes on Notre Dame? I don't know.
Too fast, too physical, too good a head of hair.
The hair is nice. I saw Marcus Freeman, our boy. He's growing his hair out. He looks good. He looks sharp on the sideline.
That guy simultaneously looks like the coolest summer camp counselor of all time and somebody you do not want to cross.
Yeah, 100%, dude. He's in shape. He looks good. No wonder they're getting some recruits, man. They go into the living room. It's great. Anything else you want to touch on before we get out of here? College football playoff wise, anything college football at large?
I don't think so. This is just, I'll do it again next week, but Tulane is certainly one of the 12 best teams in the country, and the fact that they're not even going to get a chance to get into this thing is disappointing.
If you're a Tulane fan, you got to start buying some UNLV gear. I'll tell you that much, because that's your path. That is your path, and you better take care of business on Thursday. Speaking of Thursday, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. We got a bunch of content coming out, that we're trying to peddle and get out for you during this week. Again, enjoy the holidays with your family, with your friends, however you celebrate. We will be back later in the week. We're talking some fun stuff in the NFL, our favorite Thanksgiving moments. If you're a big football fan, maybe you can kind of bring that up with your family, your friends, as some good old-fashioned nostalgia as you get ready for the NFL games, you get ready for the upcoming weekend's huge finale in college football. So we'll be back next week after the holiday, breaking down everything we saw, continue to talk about bowl projections and college football playoff, all that good stuff. So we'll talk to you guys then. Peace.